Welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Conversation. I'm Dusty White. I'm here with Pastor Bob Thune of Coram Church and Pastor Chris Hemmelman of First City Church. On Wednesdays, we sit down to talk about how the gospel of Jesus Christ connects to the questions and issues of everyday life. And today, we're talking about 2024 in review. It's December.
Happy December, everyone.
Mid-December. Here we are.
Man, where did the year go?
Hey, a couple announcements. First of all, we're done with our sort of Genesis series on the podcast. And second, you're not going to see any new episodes until the new year. So that we are going to take the last few weeks of 2024 off. We're not going to release any episodes. That's just so we can enjoy the holidays ourselves. So this will be the last one until January 8th of 2025, assuming that we make it that far. Deo Volente, as they say.
Yeah. So basically, the next time you hear from us, there's going to be a new president. It'll be a new year and maybe a new you.
Probably a new national champion in college football. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff.
Gentlemen, first question I have for you is looking back on 2024 personally, what happened that caused dependence or worship or growth in your own life? I will give you an answer first.
Way to start with a super nice surfacey.
It's a real deep question. I'm expecting some amazing answers here. The thing that happened to me is that the Lord's providence, I started to really believe in the Lord's providence deeper. And that comes through my son getting married, which is a beautiful story in and of itself because of God's providence to me spiritually. My daughter graduated high school, so we have 2 kids in college. We have a daughter-in-law at this point. And so all of that happened this year, which, you know, you could look at those and go like, man, that's just really cool. Isn't that just kind of how normal things happen? Sure. But for me, the Lord showed me that he is faithful, he will provide, and he has provided in just his divine providence. There was kind of this what happened in 2024 to me was just kind of this sigh of relief of like, yep, God is who he says he is. If we stay faithful to him, he will be faithful to us. And my faithfulness is pretty fickle. And still in spite of that, his providence has proven true. And it's beautiful to watch.
Yeah, that's good, man. I think, so interesting question, kind of thinking back on this. So I turned 45 this year, which I don't feel that old. But it kind of dawned on me not too long ago that I probably feel the most comfortable in my own skin that I ever had in my life. In the sense of just sort of just settled. Like I feel like
say that again to all the guys that are 30.
Yeah. Come on.
Tell all the guys that are 30 that you're 45 and you finally felt.
I feel comfortable in my own skin.
Praise the Lord. That's awesome. That does take a long time.
Yeah. Just this sense of like confidence in who God has made me to be, who I am. And I also like, there's this sense of where I still have a lot of like ambition and want to, do good things for the Lord. I want to continue to grow personally, grow in my marriage, like all the things. Like I still am ambitious, but I also don't feel like I'm trying to prove anything to anyone.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, just there's I think a confidence that has come from the Lord after, years of just being, life, being married, almost 20 years, being in ministry, just like all the things you kind of hit that stage in life where it's like, I want to finish strong. I want to keep giving energy, but I'm also like, man, I know who I am and I don't have to be somebody else. And so I don't know, that's kind of, as in your question, that's the thing that probably most stands out.
That's beautiful.
I think your question is so powerful, Dusty. It's an example of a great question that forces people to be vulnerable below just a surface level. And I think it's one of those questions where I'm going to listen to this podcast and be like, oh, I should have talked about that and that and that. Like, it's just one of those that like, I'd like to marinate on it for 60 minutes before answering.
That always happens.
But the thing that I would say right now, sitting here, is I have concluded, I think I stole this idea from someone, but these are probably me putting my words on it. The sins of youth are hot sins, and the sins of older age are cold sins.
Wow.
And I think, I've just had to confront this year. You said what causes a dependence or what's happened that caused dependence. I think I've just realized like I'm more cynical than I wish I was. Like I just have those sins of coldness where, like, to your point, Chris, not in a good way, not like, man, I've settled into who I am, But in a way, like I realized, like, man, when I was 25, I was really brash and kind of headstrong and probably a little obnoxious. And I think this year I've had to confront, like, yeah, I don't have it. I might still have those same problems, but they're actually I'm kind of a little bit apathetic and maybe lazy. Maybe there's ways I'm not hungry for things that I should be hungry for. Maybe I'm not like hot for the Lord in the ways that I need to be. So I've had to just do work this year to just acknowledge, man, I think I'm in that. I think my sins are more the cold sins, more the sort of apathy, disconnection, cynicism, which has always been kind of a bane of mine. And I've felt the call of the Lord to start doing more work around those things and just calling them sin and asking for passion, love, vibrancy, just renewal in ways that have felt kind of new to me.
That's good. That's good. Gentlemen, looking back on 2024, what happened in culture or the world that you think is obviously going to impact history?
Well, Trump's back. So, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
I mean, I think it's a Grover Cleveland. Like, there's only happened one other time in American history that you have a non-consecutive 2-term president. So I think that is going to be remembered historically just as an anomaly. It's just an interesting thing.
Yeah, also seems, I mean, he hasn't put back into office and he hasn't, set his cabinet yet, but it seems like the people that he has at least tabbed, whether they go through or not, but it seems as if, all that this past year and just kind of the populism movement that kind of, reemerged and brought Trump into office, could have certainly a lasting impact, depending on how, his government plays out. But I think that's, kind of the rise of populism and in many ways too, like the rise of, I don't know, like quasi-conservative kind of movement where I couldn't call Trump a traditional conservative, but there does seem to be this strong pushback against some of the excesses that we saw during kind of the COVID years and with like the woke, movement and those kinds of things where, just when you think our country is about ready to be given over to something, there's just this strong pushback in the opposite direction. So those kinds of things are kind of interesting to see how they play out. Now, what will be the long-term effects? We don't know, but hey, the end of this year really was kind of crazy.
I don't know how to answer that question. I think, can you state the question again, Dusty?
So looking back on 2024, what happened in culture or the world that you will think has a significant impact on history? As you think, Bob, here's a couple of things that were coming to mind. We have the first trans Congresswoman, Sarah McBride. So you have that. I think that is a really interesting moment in history.
Does that mean a man? If it's the first trans Congresswoman, are we talking about? We're talking about a man.
Yes,
we're talking about a man.
Yeah.
So I think that's, probably a pretty interesting thing for history. We've talked about this not on the mics, but the whole SpaceX thing and landing a space shuttle back in the same chute that it went off. We all remember, not every listener, I realize, remembers, but that in 1986, the Space Challenger blew up, killing 7 people on board. And that seems like yesterday in some regard, but compared to where space technology is now, I think that's a pretty big thing that made a ton of progress this year. So I think those are the kinds of things that looking back, you're like, wow, that was a pretty significant year where you can launch something into space and then you're going to land that 26-story building back in the same chute. You're just like, hey, park that over here, will you? Like in the 80s and 90s. In the 80s and 90s, we're like, what?
You're right. That's a fascinating moment. I'm gonna go out on a limb here because who knows how history is going to remember 2024. I certainly think the Trump election will be part of the story because he's just been such a polarizing figure for a long time. But I want to say I think maybe we saw the death of the wokeness, or at least the counter response to wokeness was stronger than anyone would have said it would be 3 or 4 years ago. And that connects to what you were saying, Chris, about sort of the Trump cabinet and kind of the populism uprising. But to me, there's just something bigger there of, I think you even saw at elite universities, they started to turn the corner of dismantling DEI. You saw sort of a turn in corporations where they started to eat themselves with all this sort of woke activism. And so I think there's something there that seems historic culturally of the rise of that movement, but then sort of suddenly the sort of collapse of some of those things. I don't think those impulses are going to go away in our culture because I think they're rooted in deep convictions people have about what's right. But I do think that some of the pushback and sort of the demise of some of those policies and initiatives will be interesting in history.
Guys, we're all pastors. We're working in churches. So as you look back on 2024, what's, one of your favorite kind of pastoral moments that went down this year?
A highlight for me was Saturday before Easter. We did a baptism service, and we baptized, how many people was it? 10? Don't quote me on that exact number, but around 10 or so. And we packed out our Lloyd Street building, and it was just such a celebration. And the people that we baptized, was just their stories, kind of all over the map from just kind of their spiritual journey, and just such a celebratory day. So it was, definitely. We were reflecting on this at our staff retreat back in October. That probably the highlight for all of us this year was that baptism celebration.
I feel like my celebration is similar. I feel like I was able to personally baptize or participate in the baptism of some people that are like brand new Christians, and I'm just really excited about the things God has done in their stories. And it feels to me like our church has seen sort of like a new wave of, younger post-Christian converts that are hungry for discipleship, and that's been really satisfying and fulfilling to me this year.
I also was going to mention a baptism, particularly there's a gal in mind who has been connected to our church for a really long time and moved around a little bit, but is now back here in Omaha, and she was baptized. And I remember looking over and thinking, yep, some things take longer. And, I often say around here with our staff, Bob, that, that's a 10-year story. There's some 10-year things. There's some 6-month-old things, and those are pretty fun, and things are hot and moving. And then there's just the slow burn. And, there's another story of a guy who was at our church, left our church, and then is now back at our church. But the fun part about it was what he said to me was, I've met guys in the business sector, and then I realized they go to this church, and the guys I'm meeting who are new to Coram Deo remind me of the guys that I miss at Coram Deo, and all the guys that I know that are still around. And so basically what was really encouraging for me was he was kind of saying like, not much has changed, and that's beautiful. And so he's kind of back around, and that's the kind of stuff that just puts a lot of gas in the tank, Mm-hmm. Also, a couple of weeks ago, I was at, I drove down to Lincoln. My daughter-in-law was leading worship for the Salt Company, which is a huge campus ministry. Bob, I sent you a photo. I walked in there, and what was super cool was there's like probably 450 college students in the Rococo Theater. It's an amazing space to be worshiping in. And I went down there JC and I drove down there because she was leading worship, but also because there's a guy on their staff team who I've been working with, and he was being sent out. But encouraging moment was everybody had a Bible. Like everybody had it was like class in there. Like people had Bibles out, they're taking notes. And I was just like, something's caught on here culturally that I should have a Bible in here and I should be paying attention. And it was just like so encouraging. I was weeping, I was crying, I was thinking, man, this could be revival. Like mm-hmm. This could be the stuff that we've prayed towards. Guys, out of all of that, what will you remember from 2024?
I mean, for me, my uncle is now the Senate Majority Leader, and that's going to be a significant memory from 2024 that's less personal and less ministry related. But if I think like, what is my family going to mark this year? It's like, well, that's going to be a huge deal for generations. In terms of my family. And so that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's a significant moment and it sort of marks it's something. We have a pretty close family on that side of the family, so there's a lot of text threads, just like rejoicing and celebrating and that kind of thing. I will certainly remember that. And I think, Dusty, the other thing is, we sent Ryan Meyer out from Coram Deo to go join with a church plant and get something started new in the city. And that, that was like a bittersweet moment for our church. But I think I'll remember that too, just because that's a leader that, by God's grace, we've been able to invest in for almost a decade. And, like sending a guy away like that to go do something new is both, there's sadness to it, but there's also joy to it. And then you feel the gaps of like, oh, now other people have to step up and fill some of those spots. And so I think as when I kind of see my role as, stability, steadiness, preservation. We've been here almost 20 years. It's like we're doing a thing, and we're trying to just like build an institution in the city that, I was talking to another pastor today, and he said, like, when you're the parent church, like your job is to be pretty stable. And then you can send out these church plants and they just get to innovate things and try new stuff. And you're like, well, I wish we could do that. But, he's like, but it's the job of a parent to kind of be predictable. And it's the job of a child to be more exploratory. And so I feel that a little bit of, there's beauty in the stability of it, but there's also joy in the sense of like getting to see leaders sent out, to do new things in the city for the kingdom of God, as we did with you years ago, Chris. But it's just sort of fun to say, oh yeah, that'll probably be a memory this year, is just that our church went through that shift and we sort of celebrated that together, and we're able to champion that cause.
Yeah. This year was, man, this is probably one of those, like, I don't know if there's going to be a year like this for First Seat. We bought 2 properties this year.
Sure.
Yeah, you did. Why don't you get some more?
Yeah, we're buying up property in Bellevue. So that, pretty amazing. Just the stories of, God's provision in that. And, it's bringing a lot of interesting, challenges and decisions we have to make down the road, but it's opened up a lot of potential opportunities for us. I traveled a lot in 2024. I went to 3 new countries.
Thanks for being here today.
So
seriously, this is the one podcast you've been on this year.
So, getting to travel both for vacation with Mindy and then traveling for ministry and getting to, spend time with some good brothers and sisters in Nepal and just seeing the work of the gospel going forward there. So pretty memorable all around. But 2024 was definitely one of those years I look back, I'm like, man, these are some pretty like significant things that took place. So it's going to 2025. I don't know what you got, but it's going to be hard to top.
For me, personally, it was my son getting married to my childhood friend's daughter. I mean, it was just like a really worshipful weekend. I'm always going to remember that. And then there were a few very significant deaths in our church, and I was able to be invited. Just pastorally, you get invited into some very sacred spaces, and I had that privilege. And there's memories that I hold there from 2024 that are just going to be etched, and that were privileged, but also sad and things like that. But I look on those with great fondness, just because of what the Lord has asked us to do. So I'll never forget some of those. And so.
Okay, one question we didn't ask. Hey, was there a favorite book, movie, podcast in 2024 that you remember reading or encountering that felt like, oh, here's a book that, when I look out on my shelf, it'll sort of be like, oh yeah, I read that year.
Surprisingly, nothing for me this year.
Really?
Nothing that, I mean, I read some stuff, but nothing that was like, whoa, that was the best thing I've read in a long time. And same thing with shows and movies. This is probably one way 2024 underperformed.
I think one book that stood out for me in 2024, my friend James Martin from the UK, when he was here, said, "Hey, have you read Dane Ortland's book Deeper?" And I said, "No." He's like, "Well, you got to have it. It's like everything we believe about gospel transformation put into one book. Like, I have my whole church read it because it's just like they understand everything I'm after." And I read that book, and I was like, "Yeah, this is exactly what James said. Like, it's a readable, understandable, condensed version of sort of gospel sanctification." And I've been wanting a book like that, because I feel like when people say, like, what do you mean by gospel-centered? It's like, well, here's a whole shelf of kind of books that are getting at that idea. So I like being able to have one book that I feel like I can take off the shelf and say, here, read this. It will give you a sense of what we're talking about when we talk about how does the gospel change us. And so, we've had some books on change in the past, but I think that's a new one that I was pointed to that I will remember and that I will find very useful.
Well, a friend recommended to me an old Henry Nouwen book from 1975. And he prefaced it by saying, hey, this whole book isn't good, but based on our conversation that we were having, he said, you need to read the first 3 chapters of this book. So I ordered it, and I have read the first 3 chapters of that book a couple times, and I have not read the rest of the book because that was...
I like a guy that's that precise.
Yeah.
He knows what chapter you need.
And it's mostly about solitude and communion with the Lord. And his whole premise is that you would practice solitude so that you could have deeper, meaningful connection when you're in community. And I've never really heard it put that way, so now I'm put it that way. And then I reread, I was coaching a pastor, and I had recommended to him James K. Smith's You Are What You Love. And so I hadn't read it in a long time, but based on the conversation we had, I was like, oh, you need to read this. And then he loved it so much, and then he kept talking about it, so I had to go reread it. And I realized, man, this book is gold. Just the things that James Smith is talking about in there. And so I reread that. I keep thumbing through Union with Christ by Wilborn. I just keep coming back to that book as well. So not a lot of new stuff, but old stuff getting reread.
Last question. Dusty, I feel like you started us with 4, and then I'm just adding 2 of
That's
my
great.
own.
That's great.
But we got time. We got a few minutes left on our podcast. As we turn the quarter in a couple of weeks into 2025, what are you looking forward to, Chris?
So we have a couple things, possibilities kind of on our plate, kind of ministry-wise. Is one, we're exploring the possibility of building on our property. So
you need Dusty to write you a check.
Yeah, I need some money. So if anyone listening to this would like to donate to our building fund, but just the work that's going to be, it's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. There's things about it I'm actually not looking forward to, but as a exercise in faith and growth, and just the way that it will move us forward as a church, I'm excited about that. And then just with that, we're navigating some new dynamics as a church, with just growth-wise and ministry-wise. And so I'm looking forward to just the continued momentum that we're experiencing in ministry. I get bored easily, or I'm not bored. I lose interest in things. I like to kind of move on to the next thing. And so to have steady sense of like, oh, there's another challenge in front. It's like the Lord just kind of like, all right, you want something? Here you go. So, but I am looking forward to just the kind of new challenges, new gear, new stage of life that we're kind of experiencing as a church.
That sounds like a lot of leadership horsepower.
Yeah. Yes.
Not just pastoral work.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it is, I'm looking forward to having to hit a new leadership gear. And so I'm thinking about, hey, what do I need to grow in? What resources do I need to kind of read? Who do I need to reach out to, ask for help? So there's ways already that I'm thinking about, hey, what worked in the past isn't necessarily going to work next year. And I also realize, hey, I kind of know my own sort of leadership capacity if I just kind of go on cruise control, and I can't do that anymore. So that's going to be really good for me as well.
I'm looking forward in 2025 to getting a cool Remarkable like the one Dusty's writing on right now.
Sponsored by this podcast is sponsored by.
No, I might be looking forward to that. I'm a little intrigued by that.
Is that all that is? Is just, that's not like an iPad with an app.
It's just
a tablet.
It's just a tablet.
Oh,
It's
wow.
just notes.
I swear, I thought that was an iPad with a fancy app.
You're paying for the simplicity.
That's right. You pay the same amount of money to not have any of this stuff because it's all about the simplicity. I'm looking forward to in 2025, Chris, our 20-year anniversary as a church.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's like a big milestone. We're not throwing a huge party. We are going to mark the moment on a weekend toward the end of August and just sort of have like kind of a 20th birthday celebration for ourselves. So I don't think it will feel like the level of what the grand opening of this building felt like, where it was like, man, we've been, like this is a huge moment.
The 10-year anniversary party was quite a milestone too. I was like, how are you going to top that one?
Yeah, it was. So, and the church is different now, and it's just a different, season. But it's fun to sort of mark 2 decades of ministry, and to sort of look back on what has God done over 2 decades, and who are we now, and who does He want us to be. I hope that I can just sort of like go slow enough in that season to sort of like enjoy reflecting and pondering, what does that mean for me? And how do I need to help our church celebrate that moment? But that's something I'm looking forward to.
Chris, you said this earlier, something in terms of like, being more comfortable in your own skin. And Bob, you made a comment about that. And I did write that down. I wrote, but prior to you saying that, I said, I feel more settled this year. And so I'm actually looking forward to settling in a little bit more as a leader. I'll be 45 in 2025. And so I'm just, I'm thinking about, I really do think, I've kind of banked on this, so I hope it's true, that I think your 40s are the decade of communion with the Lord and with good relationship. And so I'm looking forward to deeper communion, deeper connection, friendships that already probably exist, but going deeper with them. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to whatever the Lord really invites us into here in the church, especially in that care and counseling side of things that I'm always into.
As we close out the year, I want to give a shout out, because when we did our 500th episode, we said on the mics, hey, if you've listened to all 500 episodes, let us know. And there are 2 people that I know of.
Wow.
There might be more, but there's 2 that reached out and said, hey, I've listened to all 500 episodes. Do you want to know who they are?
It's probably our wives, right?
One is my mom.
Oh, yes.
And she said, she was like, I don't know if that counts, because people are just going to say I'm your mom. But
No, that's something.
I actually like your podcast. So
Man.
She's not just listening because she's my mom. She's a faithful listener to this podcast. The other was John Turek.
Wow.
Now living in California outside LA, formerly was a part of Coram Church. And he emailed and was like, hey, man, I've listened to all 500.
That means also that he was listening overseas at one point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so
he's lived all over the world. Thank you, John, and thank you, Mom, for being faithful Wednesday Conversation listeners. And if you're out there and you've listened to all 500 and you just haven't sent us an email, hey, reach out, let us know. We want to give you a little bit of credit on this podcast for being such a faithful
We will
listener.
read your name.
That's right. In the credits, when we're like, this
especially if
podcast
you
is
send
sponsored
snacks.
by Remarkable, by Camille from Long Island, and by Bob's mom and John Turek. So, hey, have a great holiday season, and we're going to look forward to being back with you in 2025. Every year when we sort of restart this podcast, we're always thinking about, all right, are there ways we can make it better? Are there topics we could tackle? Are there things people want to hear us talk about? And so over the holidays, if you have thoughts, ideas, things you'd like to hear us discuss, or things we've done in the past, you're like, hey, you should do another series like that, or you should talk about another set of things in that same category. We'd love to hear from you. So I hope you'll reach out, and we'll be back with you early in 2025.
The goal of this podcast is to equip our own church for discipleship and mission. So if you're a Christian or a church leader in another context, thanks for listening in. We pray that this conversation might be helpful to you as you minister in your context. And like Bob just said, we always love to hear from listeners. So if you have thoughts, questions, future podcast topics, shoot those to an email at podcast@cdomaha.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next year for another episode of the Wednesday Conversation.